Well, today my featured interview is Joe Payne.
Hello.
Hi, Joe.
Hey, Stephanie. How you doing?
Good. How about you?
I am well, COVID free as far as I know. No
Me
symptoms. So,
too.
yeah.
Me too. And we're going to try to keep it that way, right?
Yeah. Well, wear a mask and science is real, et cetera, et cetera. So,
What? No, it is not.
actually, I've heard that it is on pretty good authority. So,
And okay, we'll get into that, but it wasn't God that told you that, right?
nope. No.
Nope.
We
All
could
right.
talk. Yeah. I wondered where you wanted to start because my experience with religion is a lot different from a lot of your guests, I would say.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. First question. Well, okay, let's start with where are you from, Joe?
I'm from Santa Maria, California, born and raised. Lived a lot in Orchid, but it's all Santa Maria.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm
Which
from.
which for non-California people is Santa Barbara County,
It's in the
the
Central
most
Coast.
northern part. Yes.
Yeah, it's the Central Coast, like halfway between LA and the Bay Area. Santa Maria is actually the most populous area on the Central Coast, like between Ventura and Salinas, basically.
Right.
And
Right. And
Ag Town, very conservative town. Lots of religion, lots of stuff like that. So
no kidding. And that's about what 30 miles south of where I'm at in San Luis
yep,
Obispo. So we're pretty
yes,
close together.
pretty
So
much.
now
Yep,
we know where Joe's from.
yep,
And
that's me.
uh, how long have you been an atheist?
Um, probably my whole life. If I'm honest about it, like uh, I I feel very lucky in that I was kind of gifted with a critical thinking mind from a very early age,
Me
and
too.
yeah, and I remember specifically hearing comments from an adult in my life about race very early on. And then I'm talking like old enough to look up literally to this person and thinking,
Yeah.
I can't trust this person completely on this. I
And I
gotta out
remember
them.
that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I was 4 and I
Wow.
remember the comment and I was thinking, well, why would that matter? You know?
Exactly. And
And I didn't get it.
yeah, especially when you have personal experience that goes against those ideas, you're kind of like, what? What about my friends? What about that doesn't make sense?
Right. So what was the incident that made you realize that?
It was just a comment made by an adult in my life that was,
Hmm.
racial and,
Hmm.
questionable. And just based on my own personal experience with our neighbors, kids that literally live right next to us, like, what does that have anything to do with anything? It didn't
Right.
make sense. But so as time went on, it was interesting because then you start to make friends. If my parents did anything right, I mean, no, okay, I don't. I'm afraid they'll hear this and get like
I
really
know.
upset with
I've
me.
been trying super hard not to say that.
Yeah, yeah. No, my parents did a lot of things right, but I would say one of the things they did right was to not raise me with like a strict ideology or this is who we are, this is what we believe type of thing.
I love
And
that.
yeah, I'm really lucky for that. But so we weren't raised in a church. They weren't very religious people. My mom, like I would say, believes in God, and but a very like nebulous, whatever you want it to mean idea of God, right?
Right.
And I think I think my dad once told my sister, she goes, "Daddy, what's God?" And he goes, "A myth." So
Oh, nice.
like those are the most overt things, but like I didn't hear that when I was a kid, so I don't ever remember being like raised being like this is what we believe. And then I got to the age where you start making friends with people
Hmm.
who are religious. You start making friends with kids who are religious,
Or you married
and
them. Yeah.
yeah, oh, yeah, that too. But
Oops.
I remember being friends with this kid, and his family was religious. But it's like when you're a kid, you don't. I mean, we might have had conversations about it, but we were more interested in like Legos and Tinker Toys and going
As it
swimming.
should be.
Yeah, right. But so
Yes.
I remember one time we went as families. My parents and his parents and me and him went to their church. And so there was a big program that the parents were all a part of in the sanctuary or whatever. But then we just again went off to the kids' room, played with Tinker Toys and Hot Wheels or whatever.
Right.
And out there, I remember my parents telling me years later, like, oh yeah, it was a total revivalist thing. They were like doing the whole like come up here and get saved.
Oh
And
no.
my friends' parents were kind of like side eyeing my parents, like, are you gonna go? Why not? Why aren't you going? And so that's kind of
Yeah.
how my parents were. But later they did take me to, they took all of us, my older sister and younger brother. I'm a middle child, but they took us to this place I just call the hippie church, which is Unity. I don't know
Oh
if you
yeah.
ever, yeah,
Yeah.
Unity in Orchid, the Unity Chapel of Light, and
Hmm.
like the pastor there is like just a guy, who
Yeah.
after he left, he ended up like he hawking his books of poetry and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Oddly sexual poetry, but anyway, he
Yeah, well, it's a rainbows and unicorn church for sure. I like
yeah,
I
yeah.
like
And
those
so
are
like
the better way.
one week you'd hear some of the Psalms and he'd talk about Jesus, and then the next week he's talking about Krishnamurti, and then after that, it's just it was all kinds of different stuff. There were it was very interfaith. There were folks there who were Jewish descent, and they would make latkes around Passover. We learned about that.
Nice.
So it was a multicultural, interfaith experience. But I remember, that didn't preclude it from being boring, and all the things that church can be when you're a kid. Like
Right.
you have fun playing with the kids on the playground, but then other than that, it's like what are we doing? Why am I learning about
Exactly.
this type of
What's
thing?
the point of this? Yeah. All I remember is my mom tried to send us to like Bible school in the summer one time, and my brother wet his pants, and then we got to go home. That's pretty much all I remember. All
That's
I
funny.
remember from the message was coloring grapes. So that was the part I cared about, was just coloring, and it was fun.
Nice.
But yeah, I don't remember nothing else about it.
Yeah,
But the multicultural thing is very interesting. I think if we're gonna do stuff like around religion, it would be fun to embrace it in the cultural way rather than the actual, I believe this is a for real thing way. Like it's a fun
yeah,
holiday
yeah.
and go from there.
I'm it's interesting. I really take for granted because I got a lot in college. I was kind of like hippie with my thoughts. I like smoked a couple joints on the way to astronomy class, and
What?
the Big Bang, like that must be God, man. I did that thing, but then I just kind of realized like that's silly and stupid. Like we're just putting a term God on the universe, which is a thing that we understand and know through
Yes.
science and intellectual pursuit, and I'm using old language. I'm carrying dead people's baggage, so to speak.
Right.
And
Right.
but so I came to atheism in my 20s, like as far as being like the hardcore militant Richard Dawkins,
Really?
oh yeah, Christopher Hitch. I got all into Hitchens and Harris and
Mhm.
Dawkins, and my wife and I would listen to the Atheist Experience for hours on end.
I was listening to that on the way here, as a matter of
Yeah,
fact.
they have a backlog of YouTube videos of people
Ugh,
humiliating themselves, and it's just fun and
it
entertaining.
is fun.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like it's also definitely tied to politics with me, and I guess we could kind of dovetail this into mentioning I am a journalist, and I have a website where I'm doing my own journalism, and a YouTube channel and stuff. Payne, politicalpain.com, Payne, Payne. But I remember like when I was young, and I'm talking like junior high, formative years, adolescence, right?
Right.
Like I remember politics and religion, like understanding, like just trying to understand what politics was even, and then
Hmm.
realizing like religion has something to do with this, right?
It shouldn't, but for your age, it definitely does, even more than for me. I mean, well, okay, I'll tell you, the first thing I remember
Go
seeing
for
on color TV is Watergate.
it.
So I've
Ooh.
always had a
Hmm.
somewhat skeptical view of politics. I'll put it that
Interesting.
way.
Well, that's an
I just
interesting for that to be your formative
That's what I
experience.
remember. I was like 7 when that all went down. It was the Flintstones and Watergate. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
So
I remember vaguely that like Monica Lewinsky was a thing, but I didn't know what
Mhm.
it really was, right? Because
Right.
parents were like, "Well, we don't, they're mad at him, okay? They're mad
Yeah.
at the president." And I was like,
Right. Right.
"Why?"
But that was a big deal too, because you're a kid and the parents are like, well, I don't want to tell them what really happened.
Yeah, but junior high was when 9/11 happened,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
so yeah, I delineate millennials. I'm early batch millennial, and then there's late batch millennials. Some call them zillennials, and I say if you can't remember 9/11 when it happened, you're the
Yeah.
late batch millennial. And so let me just back up really quick, because like that was
Yep.
just like whoa, that was obviously a crazy thing to witness. But before that, I started trying to understand what politics meant, and I had friends growing up or a friend growing up. He's part of a big family, and they were quite religious, and they were from Texas originally, the parents, and then they lived out here for whatever reason. And so I just remember like certain things coloring their religious views, coloring certain of our interactions. And like one was like, I was really into reading Harry Potter, and my friend couldn't read it.
No.
Yeah, right. And then
Until now, right?
yeah, and I remember like having my first discussion / arguments with an adult about something, and it was his mom, and she was like, "Well, I saw this picture of a demon probing a baby's like head with a Harry Potter book or a little boy's." And I was just like, "But that," I was like, "But that," I was trying to be like, "But those aren't real, though," you know. And it's not real, man. Like I'm not going home and trying to do potions and
Right? No.
summon sacrifice goats or anything like that. I'm just, it's a great fiction. It's a really good story. Oh, no, 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 no. So it was like, well, that's weird. And then later, in between grade school and junior high, they moved back to Texas. And, it was interesting. Yeah, it was just, there was a lot of interesting stuff that happened. It was like one of those moments when it's first time out of the state, you're realizing like, oh, there's other places, and people here don't quite think or talk like people where I'm from. And that, that you're having those experiences. And this is so much fun. I remember we're watching late night. I think it was Letterman. And who goes on Letterman but Arnold Schwarzenegger? I'd like to announce my candidacy for the governor of California, right?
Yes.
And I was like, oh,
That's
okay.
good.
Yeah. And they were asking, thank you. And they were asking him about, running as a Republican in California. And I just like naively asked my friend's mom, what's the difference between a Democrat and a Republican? And like,
Uh-oh.
yeah, all she could give me was, she was like, the Democrats want to take your money,
Yeah.
and the Republicans want you to keep the money you earn. And that was like, that was her whole explanation. And just with my other experience with her, I was like, I think there might be more to it than that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's the big government and small government argument.
Yeah. Or states' rights, which is coded language for we get to treat
Yes.
who here the way we want to without the federal government. And that,
Right.
that comes into the Civil War and the lost cause myth. I'm studying to be a history major as well. So,
Oh, cool.
one of my big things is like dealing with myths and that we tell about American history. And you realize that is very tied to religious thinking.
Yes.
Genocide of Native Americans, manifest destiny, right? God,
Right.
this is God's plan. Slavery was justified with the Bible.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, because the Bible gives you rules for slavery, and there are just, there's, you can go look up the speeches of Confederate preachers justifying the ownership of human beings with their
Right.
Bible. And then you have to realize that game's still being played where, battles in the Supreme Court over, well, a religious organization, we should get to discriminate against people because it's what we believe. If you don't let us discriminate, you're discriminating against us, right? So
that is the most stupid argument I think I've ever heard.
well, but it's
I get that they think it makes sense, sort of, yes.
But that's what the South was arguing about slavery. Hey, this is oppression. You're going to take away my liberty, my right to property, these human beings I have here. So, and it's interesting because I like I said, I was really into Dawkins and Harris and Hitchens in my 20s, and I very uncritically, and this is a discussion I really want to have in the atheist community these days, is about specifically, well, it's about a lot of things, but when Trump happened, because I will admit, I, like a lot of people to the left, I kind of went to sleep during Obama times. And that's honest, because it was like, Barry's got it. We're doing fine, right?
It'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was aware of the drone strike escalation and stuff like that. I'm like, that's not good, right? So,
right.
You have a critical eye always, but something like really interesting to me happened in the atheist community, like right before, during, and after 2016. And that was like the discussion around Islam, and then this ongoing, anger and, fear of the left, right? And this, capital the left, and the left are
Right.
cancel culture, and they're coming for you, and this and this and that. And like, I kind of got duped into a lot of stuff, but believing things that, like, well, Sam Harris said it, and then, you find yourself being one of those stands online who's
Yeah.
arguing, and really, it was weird to me because I'm a Bernie guy, hardcore. I'm like,
Cool.
I make no, I don't hide that fact.
Yeah.
And I remember when he lost the primary in 2016 and Trump won the
Yep.
Republican primary. For me, it was like a splash of cold water. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, he
Yeah.
could
Uh-oh.
win. He
Mm-hmm.
could win. And I've actually been paying attention to what he's been saying. Right. I remember
Right.
having a conversation with somebody who said he'd vote for him. It was like, I'm a one issue voter, buddy. Second Amendment,
Oh, well, okay. The other issue that they all vote on is abortion.
Absolutely.
To my
Absolutely.
argument for that one with someone was basically, well, what is the point? Okay, so let's say you make abortion illegal, but what is the point if all the people are dead because this guy is in control? I mean, all the people are dead, there will be no babies to abort. So what's the point? You
Yeah.
maybe want to
Yeah.
think beyond that one issue and,
I think it's very telling just how how quickly the evangelical or the conservative Christian right was to throw away every idea of family values,
right?
with one of the most, like, morally compromised human beings, in our discourse,
It's shocking.
married multiple times, gloated on cheating on his wives,
Yep.
he's got porn star scandals. Those that's like the fun, that's
But
like
not
the comic
anymore.
relief
I mean,
scandal that
yeah,
we laugh
right.
at, between all the other ones. What
Yeah,
are you
but
gonna
now
say?
he's been saved, Joe. He's been saved now. It's okay. It's all
Oh
good.
yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, I remember. What did he say? Love me some Bible. That was one of his
Yeah.
quotes. And then when asked to cite a scripture, he's just,
Right.
no, I don't, no.
It's like, what's
Because
your
you can't
favorite
really.
verse?
That's very personal. I don't want to talk about that.
Right,
Okay.
right.
All
That's
right.
perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
opposite of what an evangelical does. That's all they talk about.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
it, and so I guess I started, like, right around 2015, or more 2016. I was just like, wait, what's going on? Like, what, how did we get here? And I remember specifically, people like Sam Harris saying, like, hey, like, because Hillary Clinton won't, like, sound bigoted enough about Muslims, this is going to turn people to Trump because
Wow.
he, is so aggressive towards Islam, et cetera, et cetera. And Sam Harris is a whole topic. We could talk about how
Right.
his lack of historical scholarship or understanding of issues, and he kind of his career has long been this game of, like, make a very controversial statement,
Hmm.
then, like, back off to it, read my full argument on my website about what I mean, and
Yeah.
everybody's acting in bad faith. And I just kind of saw through that a bit. And now I just, like, the conversation I'm hoping to have around atheism and politics is like, just because Trump very well may be an atheist, right? I mean,
Right.
don't think he
Right.
believes in much beyond himself.
Right.
But if all your atheism is good for is, like, hating Islam, then well, you're gonna find yourself aligned with some very nefarious people. And now we have a vice president Christian dominionist who is hardcore, anti-science. He did a great job with this
Mhm.
coronavirus task force,
Oh, yeah.
quite like the AIDS outbreak in his home state, right? I mean, it's just, they're praying at these meetings rather than, listening to scientists, listening to the facts. I mean, they only just started wearing face masks like a week or two ago, right? So
Right.
this
But yeah, it's dumb.
this anti-science ideology, whether it's evolution in the schools, whether
Mhm.
it's climate change, we're seeing the repercussions of that right now. Like, it's not like that wouldn't influence them when it comes to something like a pandemic, you know?
Right, right. Well, and I mean, part of what terrifies me is the homeschoolers that are stuck at home and getting no exposure. And it's not
Yeah.
all homeschoolers. There are really good ones. Fade to Gray Network podcast. There's Four in Tow. She's got a great podcast about homeschooling.
Oh,
But
interesting.
yeah, and there it's not easy to find a secular, non-flat earth, not flat earth creationist,
Oh my gosh.
curriculum. It's not easy. So,
Yeah.
like I always say the scariest movie I ever saw was Jesus Camp.
That's
It's
yeah,
terrifying.
it's a thriller, a white knuckle thriller for sure.
Right.
But people also have to realize that the push for charter schools
Hmm.
and school choice, you gotta see through the euphemism language that people use, and then we're about school choice, and it's like
Hmm.
they want a funded school that they can consume all like a product. They can pick and choose what they want, so they can
Right.
have their kids go to a school where they don't learn about evolution, or they don't have to worry about, they don't want them to hear a certain American history. I mean, you literally, the attack on education, which you don't just see in public education. You see it, when a lot of people are decrying the left and the college campus liberals are crazy, and
Uh-huh.
it's, this is part of a larger culture war that
Hmm.
has been ongoing against scientific understanding, against sociology, against history. And it's because, like, we're, when conservatives say, oh, these teachers are indoctrinating your
Uh-huh.
kids to teach them to hate America,
Ah,
you know
yeah, that's it.
it's because they're teaching you American history, and you're understanding so many things about it, whether it's like how white supremacy was baked into the cake from the beginning,
Right.
or whether, just how religion came into play in that, and how important it really was. But one of the things the founding fathers got right was you know, when that guy told me, like, I'm a one issue voter, Second Amendment, I said, did you read the first one?
Yeah.
Right. Because
Right.
as a journalist, freedom of the press, very important. But as an
Hmm.
atheist, Congress shall enact no law respecting an establishment of religion. Like,
Yes.
that isn't just freedom of religion. I get to have my religion. It's freedom from religion.
Yes. So that's the place I give my money to, Freedom from Religion Foundation.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a
It
good one.
is. It is. But yeah, it's okay. So a lot of what I remember from history was that it was all made up. Like, all I found out after after getting out of school was
Yeah.
that, wait, that's not exactly how that went down. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
still having a hard time calling Native Americans, because everybody was Indian back then, because
Yes.
Columbus was an idiot and got lost and doesn't know, you know it's
Yeah.
super confusing. We were just listening to a thing about the baseball teams, Redskins and Indians,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Well, and this again, like,
Or the football, baseball.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
for me, as atheists or secular humanists or whatever you want
Hmm.
to
Sure.
call us, we have to be vigilant, because I'm lucky enough that I don't walk around with all this stuff banging around in my head, like trying to just not fear hell, trying to not feel like a total, like there's, I'm under some cosmic magnifying glass,
Right.
being watched my every move by the totalitarian in the sky, right? So I
Hmm.
don't deal with that. So for me, like, the myths that we tell as secular people, as atheists, like, you realize so much of American history, and like you said, that this is how it was taught, even when I was a kid in the 90s, as I went to junior high and high school in the 2000s.
Yeah.
But it wasn't much better. It was better, but it wasn't much better. It was still like, I remember singing songs about Columbus, and like, half the kids wore, little construction paper Native American headdresses,
Hmm.
and we sang the little songs for Thanksgiving, and
Yeah,
it
it's
was great,
happy
right?
times.
Good stuff, yeah. And so, whether it's like George Washington chopped down the cherry tree, or like that level, like, we have a lot of myth making around our history, and I think it's on all of us to, like, take a long hard look at it, and understand. I mean, I think what we're seeing around the country and the world now, with the resurgence of Black Lives Matter after the murder of George Floyd,
Hmm.
is that you're seeing people, and tearing down all these monuments and statues, is you're seeing people really grappling. People have done the research. They have looked into the history. It's not
Uh-huh.
indoctrination to go back and read the cornerstone speech, which was given by, I believe, the vice president of the Confederacy about why are we doing this? To preserve our right to slavery. You know what I mean? There's so
Yeah.
many. You could look to primary sources and see what was motivating people. And Columbus, I mean, just read some of his letters back and forth with his sons. They were talk about Jeffrey Epstein. They were peddling underage sex slaves,
Mm-hmm.
chopping people up for not bringing enough gold. This is,
Right.
and so we're having the discussion now as a culture, like, do we want to celebrate this? Do we really want to celebrate this? And it's very telling to me that the American right has responded with full-blown authoritarianism bordering on
Mm-hmm.
fascism. Trump
Oh yeah.
wants to deploy the military. He's out in front of Mount Rushmore saying, it's the left, it's the anti-fascists who are the real fascists. Where have we heard this before? And if you know your
Mm-hmm.
history, Mount Rushmore carved
Mm-hmm.
by a hardcore KKK member who,
Yeah. Shocker.
he started the largest Confederate monument at Stone Mountain. That was his warm-up for Rushmore.
So
So
weird.
yeah, and you have, what is it? Washington and Jefferson, two slave owners. Teddy Roosevelt, a naked imperialist, right? What he did to the Philippines and elsewhere, passing around Rudyard Kipling's "The White Man's Burden" to his friends. And then you have Abraham Lincoln, and it's like, hey, Lincoln's up there,
Yeah.
being
Cool.
carved into a sacred site for Native American people. That was a
Right.
violation of a treaty, right?
Right.
So,
Right. Though there was a really good hidden brain. I think it's maybe two back. It's very recent, but there's someone that wrote a book, and I can't remember the name of the book, but I will get it. It's basically about Thomas Jefferson
mhm.
and how he was actually, there's debate, but he, based on his time, he had to go along with the slavery thing in some ways, but he
Mhm.
also knew it was wrong on some level. But now
Mhm.
you've got this problem of, are you the guy? I mean, what happens to you if you're the one guy, well, that says, this is not cool. But,
Yeah.
just the fact of treating them right and paying them decent wages.
Yeah.
It sounds like a fascinating book. And, he was the one that scribbled out all the nutsy stuff in the Bible, right? Anything supernatural, he
Yeah.
scribbled out.
Jefferson, I've been fascinated by Jefferson. I've read about him, and he kind of exemplifies or typifies this like duality of America,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so one thing, yeah, he was quite secular. He was like a deist, like a lot of those guys were back then. And he was really the big, he I think he put on his headstone it was the religious freedom statute or
Oh, cool.
yeah, and it was the wall of separation is where we get that terminology from him.
Yeah.
But on like the slavery question, yeah, he, like, I believe it was in the Declaration of Independence, he included like an attack on slavery as an institution, and of course it was quite racist
Mhm.
based, but it was an attack on the institution. But during the editing process, there was a compromise, much like the 3/5 compromise during the ratification of the Constitution, to allow slaveholders representation of the people they were holding in bondage, right? Which there's a reason why the majority of our starting presidents were slave owners, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's because the slave states got that power for a reason,
Hmm.
right? But so not, Jefferson, yeah, he had the impulse, he understood it was wrong,
Right.
but at the same time, then he was, you know, um, raping Sally Hemings, and
That was the part that's kind of up for debate. So, that would be the part that, do we really know that?
well,
Was
I
he?
mean,
I mean, we don't really know, because they'd have to keep it quiet. Because one of the things they mentioned in that too was, let's say even if he did love her, and and this was a completely consensual relationship, they could not be together. And that what it was, interracial marriage was illegal until 1967 in Virginia.
mhm.
67, that's not that
Yeah,
long ago.
I think you need to take into account though the context of, like, can you truly is there such thing as a consensual relationship if you have
Right.
ownership over that person?
Well, it's the
And
power differential problem again. You're back to the whole Me Too situation, where it's like, well, does this person have power over you?
well, I
'Cause
mean, it's even
he
more
would,
heavy than that,
yes.
because Sally Hemings was the half sister of Thomas Jefferson's deceased wife.
Right.
So because his deceased wife's father was engaged in the same behavior he was. So,
Yep.
this is like, I mean, like people don't understand the brutality and the dehumanization. And, there is scholarship of people who are trying to say, well, look at how nice he treated
Right.
Sally Hemings, and look at, he freed her
Well,
kids
for a
afterwards.
slave, for a slave,
Yeah,
correct? I
yeah,
mean,
for his
that's
slave.
like you look
Yeah.
good for your age. Thanks.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
but
yeah. So these are like complicated discussions, right? And
right.
it's just funny how so many people in this so-called new center and the right are just like,
Hmm.
the left is trying to shut down conversation. They don't want to blah blah blah. They're just going to call you racist. And it's like, well, but there actually is a conversation to have here. And the last thing about Jefferson is, because he was trying to grapple with this issue, right?
Hmm.
His own feelings and the institution that he was a part of upholding. He's the guy who, and this is, for all the lionization we do of the Enlightenment, there were a lot of Enlightenment thinkers who were just, their idea of science was just pulling stuff right out of their ass
Oh yeah.
and making up science intuitively. And, Thomas Jefferson came and they naturalized a lot of things. I think it was like Descartes, or maybe it was Rousseau rather, who was just saying women are naturally inferior and don't need to think and contribute to the discourse, right? And this is what Thomas Jefferson brought forward with the one drop rule. He came up with his own idea of like race science to justify, well, my kids, they're human, but they're not exactly human like I am, right? So it's just and this is the thing, when you start looking at history in the face
Mhm.
and you go beyond the myths, you go, oh man, there's a lot here, and not all,
Right.
a lot of it's not good. But we have to be honest about it, and
Yes.
that for me too goes into the Islam question, right? Or the in our community, the atheist community, there is a knee jerk like, well, Islam bad. Well, yeah, because it's a religion. Religion's bad, right? We can all
Right.
agree.
I feel it's no worse than any other from my point of view. It's no
Yeah,
worse than any other.
yeah, and there's and it's funny because I mean, you do see, I think theocracy is a bad thing, right?
Yes.
And you see how, yeah, in certain majority Muslim nations, it's very troublesome. Saudi
Hmm.
Arabia, if these countries have oil, we're cool with them,
Right.
all of their messed up
Sure.
stuff if they're allies. But this idea that, I mean, I can't even begin to tally the amount of calloused indifference to human beings in the Middle East that I've
Oh, right.
heard, and just growing up in America. And we should just nuke that place and be done with it. Stuff like that is it's disgusting and inhuman. And
Mhm.
I just hope that a lot of atheists realize, the atheist experience people, they work with Christians in the freedom from religion,
Mhm.
because there are religious people who understand they don't want, of course they don't want to pay property tax or taxes, right? But they also understand that the First Amendment's very important. It protects us as well.
Yes.
But I hope more atheists see that you might have more in common with Ilhan Omar than you do Vice President Mike Pence,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I
And
find Pence terrifying. I
yeah,
the two of them are both terrifying, if you ask me. I don't.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. But just looking at everything, but I mean, why people just need to stop and think and question their own beliefs, whatever that is, politics, religion. It's like talking about religion. It is politics can almost be an indoctrination in itself. Like you're saying, well, I grew up in a Republican family, therefore I am Republican.
absolutely,
you know
yeah,
and
and
nobody bothers to look at what the platform is about.
yeah, and politics is very tied to culture in the
Hmm.
United States, and so is religion, and so yeah, I definitely see it that way as well. And that for me, like questioning, I began to seek out critiques of like Sam Harris and some of
Hmm.
his ideas on Islam, because specifically I said, okay, like, yeah, like it's really easy to just say Christianity wrong, Islam wrong, whatever, monotheism wrong. But it, like, can I apply that skepticism to the stuff that I know I believe and I might have cognitive bias towards? And you
Hmm.
see, just because people don't have a religion, it doesn't mean they're immune from, you know conspiracy theory,
Yes.
crystal healing, homeopathy, conspiracy theory, my generation, the 9/11 generation,
Mhm.
which, and it's not like it was new. Your generation and before, it was like JFK, Watergate, all
Mhm.
these different things. But the 9/11 kids, like, we're watching Zeitgeist and all these,
Right.
conspiracy theory documentaries. And, once I became a journalist, and you realize, like, oh, well, you actually have to do the work. You gotta watch or go to the meetings. You gotta, look at the documents. You
Mhm.
gotta read. You actually have to read,
Right.
and so you realize, oh, things are not this like black and white simple. It's actually quite complicated, and it's
Mhm.
heavy lifting. There's intellectual heavy lifting that has to be
Yes, and you
done.
got to do the work. And
Yep.
I mean, that's one of the things I find scariest about people is that they don't do that work. They're
Yeah.
they're lazy and
Oh.
don't want to explore that next level. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell
Hmm.
me how I'm wrong and go look for it. One of the things I really like about your political pain stuff
Hey,
is
thank
you
you.
do note where this information came from.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you don't just make it stuff up. And the mask one was really good, and that's been a fun thing. Well, okay, so I know
Mm.
Joe's a fabulous musician here. I'm looking at him on
Hey,
video with
thank you.
his guitars in the background, even though
Music
piano is the
teacher,
main thing, right?
piano player, piano tuner as well. I'm
That's
a
right.
jackass of all trades, it seems.
Yep, I just sent a couple more people your way the other day, so
I know. I just tuned a piano yesterday. Thank you.
yay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Super
We should
fun.
probably say, full disclosure, I'm a journalist. You employ me. I'm or contracted through you as
Yes.
a music teacher with music
Yep.
motive, your business.
Yep, super fun.
So yeah,
It's good.
it's a lot of fun.
And so we've known each other for 12 years since you were just a punk kid, basically, right?
Yes. Yeah. Back in my ponytail days and my
Yeah,
beard,
back in the
a
ponytail
lot
days.
longer. Yep.
Nice. But you did it, so was it 2016 and the development of your frontal lobe that caused you to to actually get into politics? I know you've been in journalism for quite a while before that, but then
I
it took the political
Yeah.
turn.
I'd always been interested in politics.
Yeah.
But I would say that, like, in my 20s, and you could chalk it up to immaturity or whatever, or just, not pushing myself enough. Like I said, I kind of went to sleep on politics, but that's
Mhm.
when I really got into atheism. So I actually
Yeah.
really dove into critical thinking and stuff like that. And I just worked as a journalist, but I was mostly editing the arts section, doing like lifestyle. And so,
Yeah.
I wasn't by practice pushed to pay attention to politics, but I was just a news junkie, always have been,
Yeah.
just paid attention. But yeah, I started getting it by being into atheism. That dovetailed me into Dawkins, Hitchens, Harris, and seeing as Hitchens died, and
Mhm.
and he got all weird and neoconservative, or at least pro neo,
Uh-huh.
allied with neoconservatives because of his feelings towards Islam, and he was quite militant about that. And this was a guy coming from like straight up Marxist,
Mhm.
Trotskyist
Yeah.
left, and but he died, and so he wasn't around anymore. And then Sam Harris, was doing all of his stuff, and I just, even with my cursory knowledge of history, and or not cursory, I'm probably more well read than most, but or many, not most, but I was, I could just hear there were gaps, and I was just kind of skeptical, like, what, was he really? And yeah, 2016, I think, was a wake up call for a lot of
Mhm.
people that
I think it was too.
stuff was going wrong, and it made me kind of appraise and look at my own stuff critically, and
Mhm.
where I had the rabbit holes I could, because that's the weird thing about being like an internet atheist person, is
Internet atheist.
yeah, or you
Yeah.
or just being like a consumer of that, is you'll be, because I have a friend who is into Sam Harris, but he's gone down the more like Jordan Peterson rabbit hole, yeah, which is like,
No.
I could hear that guy's conservative Christianity coming from a mile away. Like,
Uh-huh.
he's using Rush Limbaugh, Michael Savage language with a bunch of Jungian psychology thrown around it,
Mhm.
And so, but so we would discuss this a lot. But then you talk to like any other person, and they're like, Sam who, Richard who, like
I
they
know, right?
have no clue what you're talking about. And
Right. And I think those guys get traction when people go through that angry atheist phase,
yeah,
especially. You know, and
Yes.
they go through that. I've been tricked and this was stupid.
Yeah.
I can't believe you taught me my entire life and now I'm mad.
Which,
So,
if you had a very religious upbringing, I totally get that,
oh yeah.
and you know, if your like childhood and adolescence was kind of robbed from you,
Yeah.
in that way, like, for me, like being a kid, like what was one of the coolest things in the world? Dinosaurs, man.
Oh,
And like, right, just when you're really young, like
mm-hmm.
dinosaurs, and you realize these were real, man. Like
Yes.
they're not, they're not around now. Like we have iguanas and snakes and alligators, but like just like the tremendous how like inspiring and incredible nature is, and what that can do to your mind to study natural history and nature. And it's like a multiplier effect. Your brain just explodes with information and curiosity. And it's a perfect example that no, we don't live in this simplistic dualistic good versus evil, dark versus light. We live in a
Right.
very complicated world. There's all these different factors commingling, it's complicated. It's just and but beautiful and terrifying at the same time.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I'm on board with the people that say, well, basically the planet is trying to kill us, which is which is probably true.
Well,
But
we're also trying to kill the planet too.
right, right. You know, you
So,
get right. It's just
but
coming back at you.
it's such a like evolution. And I would say that was where I spent a lot of my time in my 20s too, with science and
Mhm.
evolution. That was what made Richard Dawkins so fascinating.
Yeah. Well, plus his
He
accent, so he just sounds nicer,
Yes,
even if
but of
he's being
course,
a
yeah.
dick. He sounds
Yeah.
nicer.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And And I've been accused of being a dick for being right before. So
Oh yeah.
maybe I identify with that a bit. But he has some of his problematic stuff. But I like understanding that evolution is a very actually difficult thing to understand.
Hmm.
Humanity, studying history will trip you out. I'm taking a few classes, and
Yeah.
these things are very young. Like
Hmm.
the understanding of evolution as a fact, which it is very young. So is national, like the nation states as we understand them
Hmm.
today, and nationalism, that's a new invention. It's like 200
Right.
years old. Democracy as we know it, capitalism, the industrial revolution in the 1800s, these are all like brand spanking new.
Hmm.
And we're obviously, so many of these things are going like, they're going off the rails right now.
Hmm.
And science, just understanding science isn't going to give you this like a get out of jail free card for believing nonsense. You can
Right.
be a totally science minded person, but be pro oil, pro fracking,
Hmm.
pro nuclear energy, which isn't the safe. You hear people, it's the cleanest form of energy. It's like, I'll tell it to Fukushima, Japan, man.
Right. Right.
So
Until it's
like,
not. Yes.
yeah. So it's so complicated. Like, science has to be. I remember another guy, Neil deGrasse Tyson,
Hmm.
got some online, reaction, right?
Hmm.
From, he tried to say philosophy is dead. We don't need it anymore because we have science, right? And
Okay.
it's like, dude, bro, like, calm down. Like, the
Yeah.
humanities are very important.
Yeah.
And there's a
Absolutely.
reason why they're under attack, especially
Yeah.
from the right and the religious right, is because, this is where we understand ethics. This is where we
Hmm.
understand, history and sociology, all the influences. Like, how do we get to this point where things are the way they are? Because of understandable conditions, just like evolution.
Hmm.
We can understand that, natural selection guided life down these like funnels, of survival. We've been guiding artificially our societies. And so,
Hmm.
to understand, how and why they are this way, well, there's reasons for all of it, right? And you
Oh,
can,
I believe so, yes. But and
yeah.
if you look back, when you look back in history and you see where they were and where you've gotten to, how can you think we're in the spot? We're not in the advanced is my favorite word when it
Yes,
comes to
yes,
we're advanced. We're not. No, we're here. We're not advanced yet.
exactly.
We'll never be
Exactly.
advanced if we're doing it right. We're going to continue moving forward.
Yeah. And I think that's what's troubling. I see, like, and somebody like Jordan Peterson, and a lot of this new right and
Hmm.
or so-called new center is they're trying to naturalize things. They're trying to naturalize hierarchies. They're trying to naturalize power structures in our society, and we've heard it from the right for years. Well,
Uh-huh.
if if you do good and do right, then wealth will come to you. And if it doesn't, well, that's your fault, lazy. You should have
Right.
blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have anything to do with how we've set up this system,
Right.
right?
And
So,
you got to make sure you give that 10% to the church, or the wealth does not come back to you, by the way. And
oh
also
no.
the man is in charge. So
Mm.
there's, I mean,
Oh,
good for
well,
you, Joe, I guess, but
the meek
I,
will inherit the
I've met
earth,
your
right?
wife. That's not going to go over great for, for you.
What do you mean?
Your wife is not going to let you just be bossing her around. So
Hell no. And that's the thing. We're egalitarians like that. And uh, it's so interesting. Like, you study, one of our favorite classes that we got to take together was anthropology. And
mm,
like, you just study humans scientifically. Like, this is what we do. This is what we've done. And you realize for the majority of our time, we lived in, loose bands,
hmm
largely egalitarian. A lot of people say, oh, well, before, and really, patriarchy is something that goes back to the roots of agriculture and
hmm
civilization, and animal husbandry. Once men understood, like, oh, like there, one contact with a woman makes one child, that's my child. Like,
yeah,
hunter-gatherers don't believe that. They think
right.
it takes a tribe, literally, right? And so that not only do they raise children together and communally, they're doing all kinds of the egalitarianism is just what works, works,
Right. It's just working together for one thing, you just work together. It shouldn't be hard. And
yeah,
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 I mean, and it still does take a tribe, by the way. That's almost gotten to be a bad word. We'll call it community.
yeah,
It
yeah.
takes a community.
It's interesting because people even try to naturalize certain things by looking back at hunter gatherers, like, oh, well, the men would hunt and the women would gather, right? And it's like, oh, but no, that's not always the case,
Nope.
because there were boys who liked to chatter and
hmm
were maybe what we traditionally call more feminine, and
hmm
they got to gather, and there were women who were more stoic, or female gendered people who were more stoic and quiet and were a crack shot, and the guys
Yep.
were like, you can't come with us, so it was what works. And then,
Right.
this also gets into the college professors are trying to indoctrinate your children. I remember getting in a red-faced argument with a right-winger once, and he
Oh
literally
no.
pointed at his little baby. We're at like a party. He pointed
Oh
at his little
no.
baby like, they coming after my baby, and it was
Oh
really
no.
funny. And
Really?
yeah, and he's like, they're gonna try to tell him to be a girl or whatever. and
Oh no.
and I was like, like, they're not just making this stuff up. Yes, they are. And I was like, okay, so the Navajo had a third gender
Really?
before.
I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
pre-contact. Several Native American tribes, we have an understanding that they had a third gender that
Really?
anybody could be a part of. Yeah, and this
That's
is
pretty cool.
this is human culture, and this is where, like, the idea of gender is a construct. It's not the same as biological sex. Just like
Right.
race is a construct, there really isn't such a thing on a biological scientific
Right.
level as race. But we have to understand, yes, they are real things, because we're human beings. Just like a society is a real thing and currency is a real thing, just because
Sort
we've
of.
constructed it. Yeah, well, it's not like scientifically real, but it
Right.
is real because we say it is. And
Yeah.
that's religion as well,
That's
right?
true. That's true.
That's where it all like lines up and intersects,
I think
so
it's all fascinating, and I like being able to have the discussions with people that don't freak out when you have the discussion too.
yeah, yeah. And
That's the other thing.
it's fun to find, because I do have a few. I like to cultivate these relationships, right wingers and Christians,
hmm
who, yeah, they don't just lose their stuff or excommunicate you from their life.
Right.
Like
Or
this.
divorce you. No,
Ooh,
just kidding. I'm
yeah,
kidding. No, it's not. That's not. That's not exactly what happened. But yeah.
okay, good. Okay, well, I don't know the full story, but like this impulse for curiosity, you know, um, everybody, like, a lot of people have it, and just because, religion might be a closed world view, but
Mhm.
that's why you see so many people who are, they're intelligent, bright people, and
Right.
and curious, but they have just convinced or were brainwashed or whatever,
hmm
inculcated to believe this is the truth. So then it's just like everything becomes like, there is a lot of really interesting scholarship within religious communities, right?
Yeah.
I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd. I'm a huge, I
Cool.
read it almost every year
That's cool.
in some way or another. And the Silmarillion and the friend of mine I mentioned earlier is the same way. And you can have hours long conversations that just exist within this one constructed world.
I love
And
that.
yeah, and it's fun. Like, I'm
Mhm.
not going to lie and say it's not fun to do.
Right.
But reality is a beast we all have to wrestle with. And
Yeah.
it's
Most of us wrestle with it, yes. but
well, but
but the religion thing that gets me too is where they apply that skepticism to everything but their religion, which
yeah,
is fascinating to me. The
yeah,
cognitive dissonance that
yep,
they can't hear it because, well, you're not supposed to hear it, for one. So finding the ones you can argue with is great. But their fear of hell, you mentioned hell before, like you've never had that someone's watching you all the time,
yeah,
everything you're
yeah.
doing.
I can only
Uh,
imagine what that's like.
right. And that's one of the major roadblocks for a lot of people coming out of religion, is that one last little thing where they just still feel like, yeah, but I'm gonna burn in hell,
Yeah,
you
it's like
know?
a monkey on their back that will
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
truly leave.
Yeah. And it takes a while to get rid of it. Yes.
Yeah, but even people within those communities, they still have to deal with reality, and I
Hmm.
think that not dealing with reality, like it that's why you see so many, like, child abuse scandals in religious
Hmm.
communities, whether it's the Catholic Church, or
Right.
there's a horrifying website called Youth Pastor Watch, which is
Oh, no.
nothing. I think Dan Savage started it, with which is nothing but just spot reporting from around the country about youth pastors. Everything from just mass rape to like, I remember seeing one, like, raped a 15-year-old, in jail for it, tries to murder for hire a guy, to kill her while he's in jail, so he wouldn't get convicted. And
Oh, wow.
and just so it's, and there's like tons of documentaries now of people just in their adulthood trying to, like, finally say and it's not just like just religious communities. You see
Right.
the gymnastics community dealt with their own
Right.
scandal of that
Yes.
creepy doctor, right?
That was, yeah, not
Yeah,
good.
power corrupts. and
Hmm.
and this thing of just trusting, this blind trust that people put in people with authority, whether it's a priest or a doctor or a
Yeah.
politician. People are trying to deal with that. And so that not facing reality, well, that means you're leaving people in the wake who are just going to be ground up by the gears of these
Exactly.
systems. And you're seeing it with all the people who don't want to wear face masks, who are now infected. I mean, literally heard of people in hospitals, having a respirator tube jammed down their throat, still trying to, but it's all a hoax, man. And you see that a lot of this face mask stuff is tied to religious communities, and
Hmm.
the conspiracy theory and the QAnon. Don't get me started. It's a rabbit
Yeah,
hole.
and I'm pretty sure viruses don't care what your political affiliation is or your
Nope.
religious preferences.
Nope.
It's just gonna happen. So yeah,
Yeah.
the rest of us are left to figure out how to protect ourselves. It's a hard message to get across to people from the start, which I'm sure you covered this in your. Everybody should check though that the mask thing out. It's pretty good, but
Oh, geez, thanks.
I think so. But
I felt like there
because
was
I
so
have
much
to
more
deal
to
with it.
say on it, but
There is, but I mean, it's just simple fact that no, this is me protecting you from me, not,
yeah,
I
yeah.
am not protecting
Yep.
myself from you, and I'm not just being weird. I mean, if it came down to it, I mean, would I take my mask off just to get rid of a few people? I don't know. Joe's eyes just got really
Yeah.
big.
Whoa. Yeah. That's
But
the thing. It's like, it is. I remember, there are a lot of these signs of these people who, protested against the masks during the lockdown protests, which is real tyranny, not like the extrajudicial killing of
right,
people of color by police, right?
right,
But I'm being sarcastic, everyone.
yes,
But, some of the signs were saying face masks are communism, right? And this is because, like, you gotta, at some point, you do have to listen to what they're saying. And like, the resistance of any communitarian group-based action,
hmm,
like, there's a reason that people at the top want us to all feel itemized and separate, like, it's an individual choice you need to make about protecting
yeah.
yourself,
But
just
it's
like,
not yourself. You're protecting other people. That's the human
They
thing
don't
to
want to hear it.
do.
They don't want to hear it. It's the same thing with climate change, where
Oh,
it's
yes.
like, it's on you. You need, if you want to drive a Prius, Mr. Eco Nut, then you do that. But
Yeah.
the main producers of of fossil or of carbon are like
Mhm.
our State Department, our
Yeah.
military, and so it's and several corporations, a handful of corporations. So it's like recycling and driving low emission cars are good for us to
Yeah.
do, but it's not gonna solve the problem,
Oh, it's
because
a drop in the bucket.
we
But
actually need to solve these problems with
right.
broad-based cooperation, but they don't want that.
Well,
They
right. And you
really
said
don't
the
want it.
word cooperation. We need to work together to solve almost any problem. We can't do
Yeah.
this ourselves. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I mean, if we do something in California and then our neighbors do nothing, it doesn't
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
So,
And that's the challenge with atheism and secularists,
mhm.
is because it kind of reminds me of a Bill Hicks joke, but I'll just reword it a bit. It's like, nonconformists of the world unite. No, so it's like, we don't want to. I remember when like Atheism Plus was a thing, and so-called atheist churches, and there were like
Oh,
people just like,
no.
that's disgusting. Like, I would not be caught dead going in a group and listening to songs. And like, I have to admit, I'm that type of person where I don't, I don't know if it's being a nonconformist or a contrarian or just being a free thinker. Like,
Mhm.
I don't, I find myself at odds with what most people think and say, just because it all
Yeah.
sounds like a bunch of parrots squawking the same stuff to me.
Exactly.
You
Well,
know
they're
what I
not
mean?
stopping to think. That's why they don't
Yeah,
stop
yeah,
and think.
yeah.
Yeah, there was a South Park. Speaking of nonconformists, there was a South Park episode that I'm sure it was South Park. Yeah, that the one of them becomes a goth kid, right? And of
Oh,
course, it's
yes.
all dressed in black. Remember, and
The only
it's
way to
like,
be a
yeah, I'm a nonconformist, but
nonconformist, yeah,
yes, was
to
to wear on
smoke
the
a
black and
cigarette.
listen to this music. And
Yep,
yes,
yep,
oh, that was
that's
so
pretty
funny.
funny.
I think it's hilarious. I love that. I love that show.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But so you're enjoying your latest career endeavors?
I really am like juggling all sorts of stuff. I work part-time for the city as a music teacher, which now I'm
It's
doing
bigger.
videography because of the lockdown. Our facilities are closed.
Mm.
Um, but then I have like a bunch of these balls up in the air that I'm juggling. I'm a piano tuner. I'm
Mhm.
a teacher, obviously, through you, and on
Mhm.
my own, music teacher. And then I'm now have started this website and YouTube videos, and I guess I want to make it a podcast too. It's just like, there's so many
Yeah.
platforms, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there are. I mean, the only difference, YouTube and podcasting is if you put cool graphics up, I can't see it, if I'm just
Yeah,
listening.
exactly.
But
Yeah, but
yeah, but
even that's a challenge, doing all the graphics and everything.
mhm,
But yeah, I was a journalist for years and years. I worked
mhm,
for this one paper for years and years, and then I left, and it's so this really, starting this website, I did it during the middle of the lockdown. It's just to really push out on my own, do my own reporting, original reporting, where I'm trying to report on my community, Santa Maria and the Central Coast,
yeah,
and but also just do broader commentary, opinion. And also, I think I'm trying to do education, because
nice.
it's very easy to just hate the media, blame the media, like, it's the media, and it, like, the
That's one of the
media.
things I've loved about there was one of yours in particular. What was it? Well, shoot, which one is it that you're talking about? I think it's right before all the protests. It's
Hmm.
it's one of your earliest ones maybe that you put out. It
Yeah.
might even been one we shared on the Yappers page
Hey.
because Joe is one of the Yappers.
Yeah, yapping.
It's pretty fun. But yeah, what you do, and it's fun because I like to watch your stuff and I can tell that you're not exactly advertising that you're an atheist. You don't need to advertise that you're an
Hmm.
atheist,
Hmm.
but you just sound smart and logical and right. So
Yeah.
so I can tell.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, like, I am a big fan of Christopher Hitchens. Like,
Mhm.
I've read a couple of his books, and I've seen there's endless hours of him on C-SPAN and whatnot. And like, he's part of this tradition of, like, for years and years, he wouldn't outright talk about being an atheist, but he
Mhm.
would if asked. But he was just a lefty journalist,
Yeah.
comment commentator.
Yeah.
And that, I think, just the idea of someone like, yes, I can do my own reporting, and let you know what's going on. But also I have my thoughts on things. And that really is part of the longer American tradition of journalism,
Yes.
where, you're supposed to critically assess
Hmm.
everything you read, every story, every outlet. But if, there are journalists or people go, oh, I like that guy or gal, I can trust
Right.
them. They make like, they make good points. One of the things that
Hmm.
drove people mad about Hitchens was during the 90s, he was doing a lot of reporting on just how gross Bill Clinton was as a
Yeah.
sexual predator, as a triangulator, who really did a lot of work to push the Democratic Party to the right, into the center, into the
Yeah.
pro-corporate neoliberal, I mean, basically that was the way that they took power, was by, sounding enough, walking enough like a Democrat, but sounding enough, talking enough like a Republican, and in
Exactly.
certain
Yes.
respects, walking like a Republican as
Hmm.
well. Bill Clinton would, rush home to Arkansas to oversee the execution of a black man,
Yeah.
mentally defected African American guy
Hmm.
during the primary, and then go on the Arsenio Hall show and play saxophone. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing, is like, I'm just not a partisan, just like I'm not. To
Yeah.
me, it's like the religion thing. I'll be upfront with where I'm at and what I see. Yeah, I was a Bernie
Yeah.
guy, still am. I believe in, that our government can be different.
Well, and working together. That's the other thing. I mean, we're so,
Exactly.
you're this or
Yeah.
you're that. And I'm like, I'm an NPP. I'm a non-preferred party
Yeah.
register. I'm just like,
Yep.
I don't feel comfortable with either one of them. So
Yeah, but I also know who, like, part of it is just, you don't hear in the discourse enough people. You hear the same things repeated all the time,
true.
and I just wasn't hearing enough of, what I would say by even the people that I like, the points that
Right.
I would make. Whether it's something as simple as, you always hear from the right, or libertarians, like, taxation is theft. It's
Yeah.
like, how so? Like, it's a constitutionally enumerated power
Mhm.
that the Congress is given, and theft is defined as an unlawful seizure of property or money,
Right.
right?
Even
What?
the Bible says, give Caesar what Caesar's due. And yet
Yeah,
somehow
yeah.
they
Oh,
don't
yeah.
pay taxes. So go figure.
Yeah.
But
And yeah, and that's another thing, like, how religion plays into politics. Because if it was up to me, if I were, magic wand and make me, supreme chancellor or whatever, religions are paying taxes, and I'm talking,
right.
at least property tax, and I'm talking, it's not that I'm anti-Christian or anti-religion. It's that,
Right.
look at Scientology; they own massive swaths
Oh
of some of the
yes.
best real estate in this country.
Mormon does too. Mormon,
Yeah, the
they
Mormon
have a
Church.
ton of money. But I
Yeah.
mean, and even if you want to just treat them the same as any other nonprofit, just make them fill out the same paperwork. Let's see
Yeah.
what you're bringing in. Let's see what you're putting
Yeah.
out. And that just seems unfair to me, that there's a section of nonprofits that don't even have to do the ridiculous paperwork that every other nonprofit business has to do.
Yeah. And I understand the
Organization.
constitutionality of that. We shouldn't legislate against them in that way. I'm open to that argument, but I'm also open to the argument that, the Constitution, we could, it doesn't mean that, property tax law goes out the window,
Right.
just because you're of a religious institution. You know what I mean?
Then can't we all just make up a religion? I mean, how
Yeah,
I know.
Scientology. It's going on all the
Oh,
time.
that's right.
Mormonism, Scientology. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what mine would be, but again, it's like, it's part of being an honest actor, and
Mhm.
not, I'm really. It would be nice to make money one day on YouTube, or what I'm doing, but I'm not. The last thing I'd ever want to be accused of is being one of these grifter folks who just starts shucking and jiving for, the party line to,
Yeah,
make the money, because there's so much of that, and it's
right,
disgusting to me and
right.
repulsive. So it's,
So political pain, but not politician pain.
oh gosh, I know. I remember people telling me, like, oh, you should go into what. I was just like, I think I like being in the private sector.
Right,
I like
that's
being an
true.
entrepreneur, which is funny. I work for the city part-time, but they got me through select staffing, so it's still a private
Oh, nice.
sector employee, so
Well done.
employer. But yeah,
Yeah, that's very cool. Well, I think you're doing a great job. And I have
thank
one
you,
more
Stephanie.
question for you. You are
Okay.
welcome.
I think
One
you're
more
doing a
question.
great job too, by the way.
Aw, thank
I'm
you.
enjoying the podcast and listening to your guests. I'm really impressed by everybody. I like what you're doing, and I realize how lucky I am, like I said, to not have been brought up with fundamentalist upbringing and
It's
ideology. And
yeah, it's fascinating and scary sometimes talking to some of the people that I talk to, and just the fear involved in just being who you are, is being able to say it out loud. You can't say it. I mean, everybody's waiting for their mom or their grandma to die before they can come out and say,
yeah, man,
that
geez,
I
yeah.
just don't, and you don't have to use the strong word atheist. Just, I don't, a little bit at a time. I don't believe in this. I don't believe in that. I'm questioning this or that, and just
Mhm.
start, going down that path. And you never know who you might bring with you on the path too. So
Yeah,
there's
or
always that.
who always felt that way and then was like,
Yes,
you too,
yes, yes.
I found
Pluralistic
another.
ignorance, one of the most fascinating things I think there is out there, where everybody in the room thinks we're all thinking the same thing.
Well, that's another thing. Like people, living in Santa Maria my whole life, people always say, "Well, this is a conservative town. You're in a conservative town." You realize that, right? And ever since I started this, I hear from more people who
Hmm.
go, "I'm just thankful that because people are afraid to speak out. They're afraid to
Yeah,
speak up. They feel
absolutely.
like it puts a target on their back."
Hmm.
And yeah, I'll pick up the sword and shield and have a lot of arrows flying my way, but
Yep.
that's just the price you got to pay for standing up for what you believe in.
Yeah, I agree. And good job.
Thanks. Wait, what's your question? You have one more question.
Last question.
All right, here we
All
go.
right, this is the one we ask everybody.
Oh, yes.
Why do you think we are not screwed after all?
Uh, I don't know if I think that.
You'll be the
Um,
second
be,
one that says, no, we're screwed.
because I think that I think that innately most human beings have conscience and empathy. I think there are a lot of things about our system that have tried to tamp that down, or just there's a fraying of the wires right now, and
Hmm.
I'm not going to point the blame at any one thing like social media or Trump himself. It's beyond all of that. But, there is quite a sociopathy and a nihilism that has, kind of permeated the
Hmm.
culture. But I think rough times, you need a lot of pressure to make a diamond, right? And
True.
so rough times like this, I think a lot of people have kind of like, oh my God, like they can't afford to not pay
Right.
attention now.
Right.
And it's funny when I talk to people who say politics, oh, I just what does it matter, I don't
Hmm.
pay attention to it, it's all just they all lie, blah
Hmm.
blah blah blah. And that we're seeing right now how politics, having a functioning government and strong leader, or an actual
Yes.
leadership,
Right.
or leader, it's literally life and death.
Hmm.
Now
It is.
here we see it. It's very easy to like think, no, it's not, when all the people that our state is responsible for killing are elsewhere and don't look like
Hmm.
us, don't believe like we do, and
Hmm.
don't talk like us. But when just the sheer incompetence leads
Yeah.
to 130,000 plus dead
Yeah.
Americans.
Well, that's what
Like,
terrifies me most about this administration, is that they're not putting, I would always think, okay, fine, Trump would be president. But if everybody else working under him was not also incompetent and terrifying, it would be like Betsy DeVos. I mean, we're talking about
yeah,
education. I mean, that's the
yeah.
kind of stuff that scares the hell out
Yeah,
of me.
Betsy
It's like,
DeVos, Mike Pence,
right?
his main advisor, the one guy who survived the longest. So many people have resigned in scandal
Hmm.
and shame. The one guy who stayed there the longest is the white nationalist.
Yeah.
What's his name? I'm blanking on his name right
I don't,
now. The speech writer
I won't
and
remember.
immigration policy guy. He's
Oh,
a
yeah.
real. He's like a couple years younger than me, or a year younger than me. He's just a
Yeah.
real creep. But Steven something, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I know who you mean.
Is
Yeah.
there hope? Yeah, I think so. I think we're going through rough times right now. There's obviously been this like far right movement across the world, which has been spurred by just straight up nonsense and skullduggery.
Yeah.
The online fake account stuff, and
Yes.
I mean it's still ongoing right now.
Hmm.
All these, like, so many people have showed up to these protests with guns and AR-15s and stuff,
Yeah.
Bikers and crazy,
Hmm.
because they see these posts online about Antifa's coming and they're going to destroy
Yeah.
your town, and all of that stuff. And it just it never ends up happening, or 99%
Hmm.
of the time, unless you're in Seattle
Yeah.
or Portland or New York, maybe Antifa,
Yeah.
somebody might throw something or break something.
Yeah.
But more time, 99% of the time, it's just a bunch of paranoid conservatives terrifying the
Yep.
progressives in their community,
Yeah.
who are just trying to, march and have a nice little protest.
Yeah, and I'm pretty proud of that, because we have not. That is something I haven't seen in my lifetime. As just a lot of just a number of protests we have
Yeah.
right now that keep happening, and
Well,
you're just like, this is cool.
that's
People are coming out and saying what they believe. I
and
like that.
that's a direct response to the Trump era, the Women's
Hmm.
March,
Yep.
Black Lives Matter began before Trump, but
Yes.
now it's a worldwide movement. It's possibly
Right.
one of the largest mass movements by the numbers. Of course, we have a larger population than we've ever had, but
Yeah.
it's just unprecedented, and you're seeing a response to what is obviously corruption, what is obviously power games that the Republican Party is oh so good at playing. If only,
Hmm.
like, the one thing about the left, if I would spend any time complaining about the so-called circular firing squad and the attacking each other all the time,
Hmm.
it's that, like, we need to learn to play a long game like the
Yeah,
right has.
that's true.
They have been working on this project for a long time, consolidating their power, getting their majority on the Supreme Court, and even when they have the Senate and the Supreme Court, and even back to the days when they had the House, they're still victims, right? They're still,
Yes. Yeah, that's
there's a war on Christmas, and
it's
all of that
magic.
stuff.
There's never been a war on Christmas. It's so dumb.
Yeah. So it's
Oh boy.
and I just hope people, I think more people, if there's hope, it's because people are taking a look at what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are gonna get caught up in listening to spurious, not so well motivated actors. No one as smart as me, of course.
Yes.
Sarcasm again, but I think a lot of people are just kind of like, oh, like, this is going absolutely wrong. Like,
Hmm.
all of this stuff, and maybe it's more than just Trump, and they're really appraising stuff. So that's where I have hope.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
hope
me
people
too.
are paying attention, and we'll see how. I mean, anything could happen. Everything has already happened in just this year.
Yes.
If, like, aliens landed, or like a sentient AI, like, wakes up and runs for president, or whatever simulation theory people, crazy ideas people have. But we'll see. I just
Yep.
hope we get through it. So
I hope so too. Well, thank you so much for doing this
you bet.
today,
Thank you for
Joe.
having me, Stefanie. This is
Great.
so much fun.
Yeah. And watch for Joe to pop in the Yappers group on Facebook. So I'll talk more about that
Yeah.
later. But
I'll
anyway,
try to make it less argumentative.
No,
I have,
whatever.
it's a bad habit of mine. I am one of those people who will, my wife's like, what are you doing? Someone's wrong on the internet, that.
Someone's wrong on the internet. It must keep you up all night.
Yeah. Well, that's why part of why I started doing what I'm doing is just to broadcast. So I'm not just arguing one-on-one with people.
Yeah, I guess you would probably get tired of arguing with you all the time.
I
So
have
it's
literally
probably
got tired myself out doing that. So
that's pretty good. I like that.
cool.
Very cool. Well, thank you,
Thank
Joe.
you, Stefanie. Thank you.
All right. You have a great day.
You too.